It was supposed to be a quiet winter morning at Denver Union Station until a 70-year-old man sent a silent signal no one else saw. 5 faint taps on the arm of a woman beside him, repeated twice. To the crowd, it meant nothing. But to Hunter, a German shepherd with instincts sharper than any camera, it was a cry for help buried deep beneath fear. Moments later, the man mouthed 2 desperate words, "Help me," before being dragged toward the departing train. And when Hunter lunged, refusing to let them disappear, Daniel Riker realized something terrifying. This wasn't confusion. It was the beginning of a secret far darker than anyone imagined. If this story touches you, please help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers. Your click really means more than you think. God bless you for keeping hope alive. A cold winter morning settled over Denver Union Station, the air crisp enough to sting the skin and turn every breath into a pale ghost drifting upward. Inside the vast hall, warmth battled with the winter outside, yet the restless tide of travelers made the space feel alive, humming, and unpredictable. Moving through this tide was Daniel Riker, a 45-year-old man whose presence carried a quiet gravity. He stood tall at 182, his frame lean from years of self-neglect, though traces of an old, disciplined strength still molded his posture. His angular face bore the marks of a life lived inward, cheekbones sharp under pale skin, a jaw roughened by uneven stubble, and eyes the color of storm clouds, deep and tired, as if they carried the weight of something he never spoke about. Streaks of silver threaded through his dark brown hair, which had grown a little longer around the nape, brushing the collar of his heavy, worn brown leather coat. Beneath it, his red and navy flannel shirt peeked out over faded jeans and cold-weather boots, the outfit of a man who dressed for utility, but carried the remnants of a past he couldn't quite escape. Beside him walked Hunter, a 5-year-old German shepherd, with a thick sable coat, sharp ears, and intelligent amber eyes that scanned the environment with disciplined precision. Hunter's posture was alert, but calm tail, steady head, level paws moving in measured steps. He wore a simple working harness, scratched and weathered, yet maintained with an almost military care. Hunter had been Daniel's closest companion since the day the world had collapsed around him years earlier, the dog becoming both anchor and lifeline during the long years Daniel spent avoiding people, avoiding memory, avoiding himself. Today, however, Daniel tried to keep his mind still. Another morning, another attempt at living somewhat normally, even if he wasn't sure what normal meant anymore. The station roared with noise, rolling suitcases, train whistles, laughter from families reunited, muttered curses from passengers running late. But none of it reached Daniel deeply. He existed inside a quiet inner shell, moving through the world like a man who had seen too much and trusted too little. Until Hunter stopped. It happened in an instant. 1 second Hunter was walking at Daniel's side. The next he froze mid-stride, ears snapping upward, muscles tightening beneath his coat. Daniel felt the tug through the leash, subtle at first, then sharp. "Hunter," he murmured, his voice low-edged with concern. "Easy, boy." But Hunter wasn't responding to him. The shepherd's gaze was locked onto something ahead, something small within the sea of motion. Daniel followed the dog's line of sight. At first he saw nothing unusual. Travelers weaving between gates, a group of tourists laughing too loudly, a businessman nearly spilling his coffee while checking his phone. Then he saw them, an elderly man perhaps 70 tall but frail, his thin shoulders slumping beneath a gray wool coat. His hair, snowy white and disheveled, peeked from beneath a knitted hat that seemed too loose for his trembling frame. His skin was pale, almost translucent, with deep lines carved by age and perhaps sorrow. His steps were unsteady, and his breath showed faintly even indoors. His arm was tightly gripped by a woman walking beside him, a woman in a bright red winter coat. She appeared to be in her late 40s with sharp features and blonde hair pulled back severely under a wool beanie. Her grip on the old man's arm was firm, almost too firm, and her eyes darted around with an alertness that did not match the casual pace she tried to display. Something about her posture felt defensive, calculating. Daniel stiffened. He didn't know why, but something about the pair unsettled him. Hunter seemed to feel the same. The shepherd took a small step forward, nose twitching as he locked onto the elderly man. Then Daniel saw it, small, almost invisible within the motion of the crowd. The old man's right hand trembled, then tapped lightly against the woman's arm. Once, twice, 3, 4, 5. A pause, then again 5 taps, slow, deliberate, desperate. A rhythm no one else noticed, but Hunter did. The dog's ears pressed forward sharply. His body leaned into the signal like a whisper of danger only he could hear. Daniel felt the tension rise through the leash. "Hunter, what is it?" he whispered more to himself than to the dog. The old man lifted his head slightly, turning just enough for his eyes to meet Daniel's. There was no mistaking what Daniel saw in them, fear raw, and pleading the kind of fear a man displays only when he knows there may not be another chance. Hunter barked once, loud and cutting. The woman in the red coat jolted as if struck. She yanked the elderly man's arm and hurried her pace toward Gate 7, her movements losing their attempted calm. The old man stumbled, dropping his knitted hat. The small gray item rolled on the floor until it came to rest near Hunter's paws. The dog lowered his head, sniffing it, his whole body going tense. The old man looked back once more, his lips pressed together. No sound escaped, but Daniel clearly saw the silent words, "Help me." An announcement blared overhead, final boarding call for train 118 Gate 7. Hunter's growl deepened, vibrating through the leash, and straight into Daniel's chest. He understood the meaning without words. If that train left with the old man on board, whatever was happening would vanish into the tracks, stretching toward the horizon. The woman shoved the old man through the widening gap of the train door. The conductor prepared to signal departure. And Daniel Riker stood frozen between his past that taught him never to interfere again, and the dog at his side begging him to act now. The train began to move. Snow flurries drifted across Denver's sky as police sirens cut through the bustle around Union Station, turning the once crowded terminal into a tense, partially locked-down zone. Daniel Riker stood near Gate 7, his breath fogging in the cold air drifting through the platform doors. His heart hammered with a sharp, familiar tension he hadn't felt in years, an unwanted echo of the past he thought he had buried. Hunter stood firmly at his side, the German shepherd's posture, rigid ears, pricked eyes tracking every movement like a soldier ready for orders. Daniel tightened his grip on the leash more for grounding himself than restraining the dog. Officers in navy blue jackets moved quickly around him. Among them was Lieutenant Mark Ellison, a sturdy man in his early 50s with a square jaw, silver-streaked hair cropped close, and a stern but fair demeanor. Ellison's presence carried the confidence of someone who had faced chaos many times before. His voice was calm, even under tension, though lines of fatigue etched the corners of his eyes, signs of a man who'd seen too many ugly truths in his 30 years on the force. "You sure about what you saw?" Riker Ellison asked, glancing at the tracks where the train had vanished minutes earlier. Daniel's voice felt tight. The old man wasn't traveling willingly. And Hunter reacted before I even understood what was happening. Ellison studied the German shepherd, then looked back toward Gate 7. "I've learned never to doubt a good dog," he muttered. "Let's pull the footage." Inside the security room, screens flickered with grainy images of passengers moving through the station. Daniel leaned forward, eyes narrowing as camera angles switched Gate 5, Gate 7 main hall ticket counters. Finally, they found the clip. The elderly man, frail, trembling eyes darting, was clearly being guided rather than accompanied. The woman in the red coat gripped his arm with a force that contradicted the smile she wore. The footage showed something the crowd had missed the 5 taps. Twice. Rhythmic. Intentional. Daniel felt a chill, not from the cold. He was signaling, he whispered. He was asking for help. Ellison exhaled slowly, jaw tightening. Let's search her belongings. Meanwhile, Hunter was sniffing intensely around the area where the old man had dropped his knitted hat. His muscles quivered with focus. Daniel recognized the behavior. Hunter wasn't just tracking a scent. He was processing something deeper, more complicated, as if the traces carried a story only the dog could understand. 2 officers returned, carrying the abandoned duffel bag from the woman in the red coat. One of them was Officer Jamie Torres, a tall, slim man in his late 30s, with olive skin, cropped black hair, and a scar along his chin from a knife incident during a past arrest. His eyes were sharp, always analyzing a habit formed from growing up in a rough neighborhood where reading danger kept him alive. Torres opened the bag carefully. You're going to want to see this. Ellison leaned over. Inside were 3 burner phones, cheap and unregistered. Torres lifted them with gloved hands. All wiped. No SIM cards. Beside them was a small, worn notebook filled with cryptic symbols, arrows, dates, and what looked like hand-drawn maps. Some pages had coordinates scribbled in quick, desperate handwriting. Beneath the notebook, a stack of photographs spilled onto the table. Faces of elderly men, ages ranging from 60 to 80. Some looked tired, others confused, others simply gone behind their eyes. There must have been 20 or more. Daniel's stomach tightened. All of them men, he murmured. All seniors. Torres nodded grimly. Look at the backgrounds. Homeless camps, shelters, public benches. Daniel's chest tightened even more. Something about this hit too close to his own experiences, working with vulnerable populations years ago. People forgotten by society, overlooked, until someone needed them for the wrong reasons. Check the IDs, Ellison ordered. Another officer sifted through a bundle of laminated cards, driver's licenses, senior passes, medical IDs, all with different names, all with different addresses, but the same woman's photograph. Multiple aliases, the officer said in disbelief. She's been pretending to be guardian for all of them. Daniel rubbed his hand across his jaw, the stubble scraping his palm. Why seniors, he whispered. Why target old men living alone? Hunter suddenly nudged forward, nose buried deep into the red coat someone had placed on the analysis table. The shepherd inhaled sharply, then stepped back with a low growl, tail-stiff ears flattening, as if overwhelmed by something disturbing. Daniel moved closer. What is it, boy? Hunter pressed his nose again into the fabric, searching, confirming, before giving a deep, mournful whine. Ellison frowned. What's he picking up? Daniel swallowed hard. Not 1 cent. Not 2. Too many. Hunter nudged the coat again, then looked up at Daniel with eyes full of urgency. Daniel interpreted the meaning instantly. There are more men, he said slowly. At least 5, maybe more. He smells them on her coat. The room fell silent. Not the silence of confusion, but the silence of realization. Of something bigger, darker, spreading its shadow far beyond a single frightened old man on a train. Ellison crossed his arms, his expression shifting into the grim composure of a man who had just stepped into a deeper investigation than expected. This wasn't a simple abduction, he said. This woman is part of something organized. Daniel felt a pulse of cold anger, an emotion he had spent years trying to bury. Hunter! This isn't a normal coercion, is it? The shepherd met his gaze, amber eyes burning with certainty. No hesitation. No doubt. Only truth. Daniel tightened his fist until his knuckles whitened. Whatever he had stumbled into, he couldn't walk away anymore. Cold night winds slashed across the northern outskirts of Denver, carrying the metallic scent of snow and the empty echo of abandoned industrial yards. The area was a forgotten sprawl of rusted warehouses, cracked asphalt, and skeletal metal beams rising like ghosts against the moonless sky. Daniel Riker stepped out of the tactical van, first pulling his worn, brown leather coat tighter around his shoulders as the wind stung his cheeks. His breath fogged in front of him, drifting upward like smoke from an old memory he wished he could forget. Years ago, this kind of environment, the dark, the unknown, the sense of being hunted by the truth, would have triggered something fragile inside him. Tonight he felt that old tension rising again, coiling beneath his ribs, reminding him of the man he used to be, and the man he feared he still was. Hunter leaped down beside him, the 5-year-old German shepherd's powerful frame bracing against the cold. His sable fur rippled in the wind, and his amber eyes glowed with an unwavering focus that made him look almost supernatural in the dim light. Hunter's breaths formed quick white clouds, but his posture remained sturdy, steady, resolute. Behind Daniel, Lieutenant Mark Ellison exited the van, adjusting the tactical vest over his bulky winter jacket. His stern features, square jaw, short silver hair, deep-set, wary eyes, reflected a man who had spent decades entering places just like this, forgotten corners where terrible things happened without anyone watching. Officers Jamie Torres and 2 additional members of the Special Response Team followed close behind. One was Sergeant Will Harper, a tall, muscular man in his mid-40s, with dark skin, a shaved head, and a neatly trimmed beard. His voice was calm, but his stare held years of suppressed anger toward criminals who preyed on the vulnerable. The other was Officer Dana Lewis, a woman around 30 with sharp cheekbones, pale skin, and short chestnut hair tucked beneath a black beanie. Her blue eyes were alert, scanning every shadow, a habit from her youth, growing up in unsafe neighborhoods where darkness hid more than just night. Daniel looked at them all, his voice low. This place hasn't been touched in years. Ellison stepped forward, flashlight, cutting through the swirling frost. Until recently. The group moved in a tight formation across the uneven ground. The wind howled through gaps in the broken sheet metal walls, creating an eerie whistling that sounded almost like distant cries. Daniel's heartbeat thudded in his ears as they approached the first warehouse, a squat, rusted structure with peeling paint and broken windows. Hunter suddenly pulled the leash, taut nose lifting. "He's got something," Daniel murmured. Hunter moved forward with slow, deliberate steps, sniffing the air, as though piecing together a story only he could read. His ears twitched, his breathing deepened, and he trotted toward a smaller side door, half buried behind fallen debris. Torres cleared the entrance with one smooth motion, his scar catching the glow of Ellison's flashlight. Daniel pushed the door open, the rusty hinges screeching loud enough to echo through the empty yard. The interior smelled of dust and oil. But beneath that was something else. Something human, something old. Hunter stepped inside first, and the beam of Daniel's flashlight fell across a disturbing sight. Rows of folding chairs, some tipped over, some still upright. Thick rope coiled on the ground. Half-empty syringes scattered under a workbench, and wrappers of sedatives tossed carelessly into a bucket. Daniel's jaw clenched. This is where they kept them. Harper exhaled sharply, his large shoulders rising and falling. "Whoever's running this isn't small time. This is organized." Lewis moved to inspect the rope-gloved fingers tracing its frayed edges. These bindings were used recently, within hours. Ellison crouched near a tipped-over chair. Someone left in a hurry. Hunter lowered his head to the concrete floor, nose brushing faint footprints and faint smudges of dirt. A low rumble vibrated in his chest, a warning, a discovery Daniel wasn't sure which. Then Hunter stiffened. The dog's muscles locked, his ears snapped forward, tail rising in a rigid line. Without hesitation, Hunter darted toward the far corner of the warehouse, nails scraping against the concrete. Hunter, Daniel called, racing after him. The German Shepherd halted at a metal hatch embedded in the floor, an access point to an underground storage pit. Hunter sniffed frantically around the edges, his growl deepening as Daniel reached him. Daniel dropped to one knee and shone his light across the dusty floor. His stomach twisted. There, etched faintly into the dirt, were drag marks, like someone had been pulled across the floor and lowered into the hatch. "This is bad," Daniel whispered, throat tight. "Really bad." Ellison knelt beside him. "Try the latch." Torres moved forward, gripping the metal handle and pulling hard. "Rust's got it sealed," he grunted. "We'll need tools to force it open." Daniel felt a rising urgency, an instinct screaming at him that time was slipping away again, just like at the station. Hunter paced circles around the hatch, growling softly, pawing at it, as if begging Daniel to hurry. The wind roared through the broken walls again, shaking the loose metal sheets. And then, a sound. Far off at first, then louder, the unmistakable roar of an engine. Harper spun toward the broken window. Vehicle approaching Ellison barked orders. Positions, lights out, move. Daniel pressed against the wall. Hunter crouched beside him. Headlights sliced through the darkness outside, sweeping across the warehouse like a predator's gaze. A black SUV barreled down the cracked access road tires, kicking up ice and soil. The moment Daniel saw it, something inside him snapped. The same instinct that had screamed at the station now roared through him like fire. He didn't hesitate. "Hunter!" he shouted. "Get him!" The German Shepherd burst from the warehouse like a shadow sent into the night pause, striking the frozen ground with the force of a bullet. Daniel sprinted after him as the SUV skidded violently, its engine howling as it accelerated toward the highway. The chase had begun. A thin veil of fog clung to the icy highway, turning the Colorado night into a shifting silver blur beneath the faint glow of broken streetlights. The cold bit at every exposed surface, sharpening sounds, sharpening fear, sharpening instinct. And nothing cut through that frozen darkness faster than Hunter. The German Shepherd tore down the empty rural road with explosive speed, his sable coat rippling like a wildfire in motion, paws hammering the asphalt in a furious rhythm. Every breath from his throat came out as a burst of white steam trailing behind him like smoke from a locomotive. Daniel Riker sprinted after him with everything he had, his worn brown leather jacket slapping against his sides, flannel shirt damp with sweat beneath. His chest burned, but his mind burned hotter, fueled by the rising dread that if Hunter failed to catch that SUV, the trail to the missing elderly men might vanish just as the train had hours ago. Behind Daniel, Lieutenant Mark Ellison's voice cracked through the radio, steady but breathless. "Unit 2, closing in, keep visual on the suspect vehicle." Sirens wailed in the distance, bouncing off the abandoned barns and open fields of the outskirts. Officers Jamie Torres, Will Harper, and Dana Lewis followed in 2 patrol vehicles, their faces tight with urgency. Torres gripped the wheel with white knuckles, his scar along his chin deepened by tension. Harper's muscular frame leaned forward, ready to leap out before the car even stopped. Lewis scanned every shadow ahead, jaw set, her blue eyes catching the flashing lights behind them. The black SUV roared down the road ahead, taillights slicing through the fog like burning coals. The driver, a man whose face hadn't yet been seen, jerked the wheel sharply left, then right, desperate to shake off the animal chasing him. But Hunter moved like a creature carved from instinct and purpose. When the SUV swerved left, he dove right. When it veered right, He accelerated straight through its arc. The dog was a streak of muscle and focus, unstoppable, unafraid. Daniel's mind raced as fast as his legs. He wasn't 20 anymore, wasn't the man who once ran into firefights without hesitation. His breath hitched, his legs throbbed, and the ghosts of past mistakes whispered at the edge of his thoughts. But none of it mattered now. Hunter was out there alone, and Daniel had already failed too many people in his life. He refused to add these missing men to that silent list. Ahead, the SUV screamed across a patch of ice tires, fishtailing wildly. The driver overcorrected, swerving so violently the back bumper clipped a guardrail. Sparks exploded in a brief arc of orange against the night. The vehicle steadied barely and sped on. The passenger window rolled down. A hand emerged, not with surrender, with a gun. Daniel saw it the moment the barrel appeared, gleaming cold under the moonless sky. "No," he shouted, voice shredding as it left his throat. The gunman aimed not at the officers, but at the dog. Hunter was too close, far too close. The driver leaned out to get a clearer shot. Then everything happened at once. Hunter lunged. A streak of fur muscle and unwavering courage soared upward, jaws clamping down on the driver's heavy winter coat sleeve. The gunshot fired, echoing across the fields, but the bullet shot harmlessly upward as the driver jerked off balance. Hunter's weight twisted the man's arm, and the SUV spun violently across the icy pavement. Daniel skidded to a stop just as the vehicle slammed sideways into a metal fence. The crash howled through the night, a screech of bending steel shattering glass, and a desperate grunt from the driver. Steam hissed from the crushed hood. Hunter hit the ground, recovered instantly, and sprinted back to the driver's side, placing himself between the suspect and anyone he might harm. Daniel reached the SUV, seconds after the impact, chest heaving, heart pounding against his ribs like a hammer. The driver struggled to crawl out through the broken window, blood trailing from a cut on his forehead. He was a gaunt man in his late 40s, with sunken cheeks, greasy dark hair, and eyes that darted like a trapped animal. His skin was sallow, his breath ragged, his face lined with years of desperation and moral decay. Hunter stepped forward, Hackle's raised lips pulling back to reveal gleaming white teeth. A deep growl rumbled from him, steady, authoritative, primal. The man froze, trembling hands lifted weakly. The patrol cars arrived in a whirl of lights and noise. Torres jumped out first, weapon drawn, voice sharp. "Don't move." Harper sprinted to the passenger door and yanked it open. Inside the SUV, two elderly men lay bound with rough rope, their faces pale under the dim interior light. One man had wisps of silver hair and deep wrinkles etched by suffering. The other, maybe mid-60s, bore bruises along his cheek and a swollen wrist. Both looked exhausted, dehydrated, terrified. "They're alive," Harper called out, though his voice cracked with the weight of what he saw. Dana Lewis knelt beside them, her normally sharp tone softening. "You're safe now, sir. We've got you." One of the old men lifted his trembling hands as Harper cut the ropes. His voice shook barely more than a whisper. "There are more like us. They keep them somewhere else." The second man nodded weakly, tears welling in his eyes. Daniel felt his stomach twist. Not relief rage, controlled, cold, unshakable rage. He looked at Hunter, who met his gaze with the same unwavering certainty Daniel had seen earlier that night. The dog didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't move. He simply stared as if saying, "This isn't over. Not yet." Daniel wiped the sweat and snow from his brow and exhaled the fog from his breath, drifting up into the night. "All right," he murmured. Voice low, but resolute. "Then we keep going." And Hunter, standing tall beside him, answered with silence. silence that carried promise, purpose, and the next step of a rescue mission far from finished. A soft curtain of snow drifted over the outskirts of Denver as dawn crept across the horizon, bathing the industrial district in pale, washed-out light. The once menacing structures looked almost fragile under the gentle snowfall, their rusted edges softened by the quiet morning. But inside Daniel Riker's chest, nothing felt soft. His pulse still throbbed with the remnants of the night's chase, with the terror he had seen in the eyes of the men rescued from the SUV, and with the weight of one haunting truth: there were more. Hunter trotted beside him as the special response team moved toward the second warehouse, indicated in the scribbled coordinates found in the woman's notebook. The German shepherd's ears flicked with each creak of loose metal overhead, his breath forming small white clouds that dissolved into the frigid air. Daniel rubbed a hand over his rough stubble, feeling the cold sting his fingers. He was exhausted, but the exhaustion was drowned beneath a rising force inside him, a mix of dread, determination, and something else he hadn't felt in years: purpose. Lieutenant Mark Ellison led the formation, shoulders squared, flashlight slicing through the dim corridor that ran between crumbling concrete walls. Behind him, Officer Jamie Torres checked corners with a trained rhythm, his scarred chin set with grim resolve. Sergeant Will Harper moved like a wall of muscle, silent, but ready to break down anything between them and the victims. Officer Dana Lewis scanned overhead pipes and shadowed recesses, her every movement sharpened by vigilance. As they reached the final steel door, Daniel felt the old anxiety climbing into his throat, the kind that had once paralyzed him during missions long ago. The cold sweat, the short breaths, the ghosts of those he failed. But then Hunter brushed against his leg, steady, warm, unafraid. That single touch steadied Daniel, grounding him. "We go on my count," Ellison whispered, placing one gloved hand on the rusted handle. The metal felt brittle, like it might crumble from the weight of what lay behind it. 3, 2, 1. Harper rammed the door with his shoulder. The hinges shrieked. The entire structure shuddered. Then the door flew inward. A smell of dust, sweat, and despair flooded out. The light from their flashlights revealed a devastating sight. 7 elderly men lay inside the warehouse, huddled together on thin mats, each of them bundled in mismatched blankets. They were gaunt, their cheeks sunken, their eyes hollow from days, maybe weeks, without proper food or warmth. Their hair, gray or white, clung to their scalps in wisps, skin bruised, wrists raw from rope burns. They looked like ghosts forced to continue breathing. Daniel's heart constricted painfully. These men, these forgotten souls, had been stolen from streets, shelters, lonely apartments, dragged into the darkness without anyone noticing. One man, maybe 80, with trembling hands and a long white beard, tried to sit up but collapsed halfway, wheezing. Another, bald with deep wrinkles and one cloudy eye, blinked rapidly as the bright lights hit him. A third man, frail but alert, stared at them with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Please," he whispered, voice cracking. "You're real, aren't you?" Ellison stepped forward gently. "You're safe now, sir. We're here to take you home." But before any officer reached them, Hunter moved. The German shepherd padded forward quietly, lowering his head as he approached the first elderly man. He sniffed him gently, then nudged the man's trembling hand with his nose. The old man gasped, tears welling. Oh, bless you." Hunter went to the next man, then the next. With each one he offered the same silent comfort, sniffing, leaning in, resting his head lightly against their knees or palms. His amber eyes softened with a warmth that no human could imitate. Several of the men began to cry, quiet, broken sobs of men who thought they would die in the dark, unseen, unheard. Daniel swallowed hard. Something about the sight tore deep into him. He remembered his father's last years alone, drifting, losing memories until all he had left were shadows. Daniel had always feared becoming like him, or abandoning someone the way he once felt abandoned. Perhaps that was why this case clawed at him so fiercely. These men weren't just victims. They were reminders. Torres and Lewis quickly began cutting ropes and offering blankets. Harper lifted one frail man into his arms as gently as if holding a child. Ellison radioed in medics, his voice cracking for the first time all night. "We've got survivors. Repeat, 7 survivors. They need immediate transport." As they worked, one old man, frail but conscious, reached out toward Daniel. His hand shook violently. Daniel stepped closer and knelt, ignoring the cold seeping into his knees. The man's voice was little more than a breath. I thought I'd die in here." Daniel's eyes softened, his storm-gray gaze meeting the man's watery one. "Not today." The man squeezed his fingers around Daniel's hand, weak but desperate. "You, and that brave dog, you gave me another chance." Daniel looked down. Hunter had settled beside him, leaning against Daniel's leg, his chest rising and falling in calm, steady breaths. Snowflakes drifted through the broken windows, settling lightly on the German shepherd's fur, like tiny stars. Daniel exhaled slowly, emotion tightening his voice. "It wasn't me," he whispered. "He's the one who heard your call for help when none of us could." Hunter lifted his head, the soft brown-gray of his eyes reflecting the dim dawn light. Then he rested his head against Daniel's leg, steady and sure. Outside, as medics and officers filled the warehouse, Daniel and Hunter stepped into the snowfall, the chaos quieting behind them. In the pale morning, 2 figures stood close, a closed-off man healing in silence, and a loyal shepherd who had dragged him back into the world. Together they watched the last survivors being carried out their shadows, merging with the gentle rise of a new day. In moments like these, we're reminded that miracles still walk beside us sometimes, on 4 paws, sometimes through the quiet courage God places in ordinary people. This story is not just about rescue, but about how compassion can cut through darkness in our own everyday lives. If it touched your heart, please share it so others may feel the same light. Leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and join us in spreading hope. And may God bless you, protect your family, and guide all of us to see the silent cries around us and answer them with love.